Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. The garage door opened at 2:08 a.m. I hadn't touched the remote. I was sitting in the dark, on the stairs, holding the edge of the railing so tightly my fingers went numb. Her headlights flashed through the frosted window panels, and for a moment, just a moment, I imagined she'd walk in crying, maybe holding flowers, saying she'd made a mistake. Instead, she giggled before the engine even cut off. I didn't move. I didn't call out. I just listened to her heels tapping against the concrete floor, stopping once. Probably to fix her lipstick in the mirror she thought I never noticed she installed by the door. Then she stepped inside, still smiling, still glowing with whatever thrill she thought I'd never notice. And then she saw me, sitting there, quiet, still, small even. She froze like a child caught sneaking back into the house after curfew. I wasn't supposed to be awake. That's how it always worked, right? She'd slip in late, I'd pretend to be asleep, and we'd both play dumb until the routine felt normal again. But not that night. That night I spoke first. You said you were at your sister's. She blinked, then tilted her head, like she was about to lie again. The kind of casual, rehearsed lie she'd mastered over the past 6 months. But I didn't wait for her to answer. I stood up, handed her the tiny, folded note I'd written hours ago. She took it, eyes darting, confused, maybe amused. She unfolded it slowly, way too slowly, as if she knew the moment it opened, something irreversible would happen. When she read it, the color drained from her face. The note said, "I hope he was worth it." That's when she noticed the living room behind me was empty. No photos, no books, no keys on the hook, no shoes by the door. My name on nothing, just space, and silence, and me already gone in every way that mattered. She didn't follow me right away. I'd expected shouting, maybe tears, definitely excuses. But she just stood there holding that tiny note like it was ticking in her hand. I think it took her a full 2 minutes before she even called my name. By then, I was already halfway to the airport, watching the city lights disappear in my rearview mirror, wondering how many lies it had taken to build the life I just walked out of. I didn't answer her first call, or her second, or the next 35. I let the phone vibrate in the console like a dying insect. I only stopped once, at a gas station just outside the state line. That's when I swapped out the SIM card. New number, clean slate. I stood there beside pump number 4, clutching a warm bottle of water, and watched the stars overhead, wondering how long it would take her to realize she wasn't going to talk her way out of this one. But she tried. I knew she would. The next morning, she texted my old number, even though it was disconnected, pretending nothing happened. "Babe, can we talk?" Classic. I imagined her pacing in the kitchen, opening drawers, realizing every single trace of me was gone. Bank accounts emptied, titles signed over, rent terminated, the name Ellis wiped from every document like I'd never existed. And still, she had the audacity to act like we could sit down and talk it through. But here's where it gets strange. Later that same day, I got a call. Not from her. From a man I didn't recognize. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Ellis?" he said. "You don't know me, but I know your wife." I nearly dropped the phone. "She told me you were in therapy, that you were sick, that you were—" He paused, controlling. But I saw the note, and now I don't know what to believe. Turns out, G wasn't some faceless fling. His name was Grayson, a divorced father of 2. She told him I was the problem, that I manipulated her, that I tracked her phone and stole her passwords. She'd made me into a monster so she could keep playing house while she slept in someone else's bed. And now he was calling me for the truth. I didn't give it to him. Not yet. Because I knew something he didn't. Kim hadn't just been cheating on me emotionally. There was more. And it was going to get ugly. I didn't hang up on Grayson. I let him speak. I let him stammer through his confusion, his guilt, his awkward half-apologies for being part of something he didn't fully understand. He kept saying things like, "She made it sound like you were impossible," and "I didn't know you were even still together." I didn't answer any of that. Instead, I asked one question, When did it start? There was silence. Then a low, defeated sigh. About 7 months ago. 7 months. That meant she had already been lying to me through our last anniversary. Through Christmas. Through the time she claimed to be traveling for a conference while I stayed home with the flu. I clenched my jaw so tight my ears rang. Grayson didn't know it, but with that single answer, he'd just confirmed that everything I thought was stable had been a facade for over half a year. But what made it worse, what really punched me in the gut, was what he said next. She told me she wasn't taking anything from you, that you had your own accounts, your own stuff. But last night, I saw her pull out a card with your name on it. That stopped me cold. Card with my name. She used it to pay for dinner. Said it didn't matter. Said you'd never notice. I stayed silent for a long time. Then I said, "That card's been closed for 2 days." Another pause. "Oh," he said quietly. Then, "That explains the screaming match she had with someone on the phone this morning." I didn't need to guess who. Kim had probably called the bank, furious, playing the victim as usual, trying to explain why a mistake had frozen her spending. I planned every step. Let her have the affair if that's what she wanted. But not on my dime. Not with my name. Grayson sounded smaller now. "Look, man, I'm not trying to cause more damage. But if you want to talk like man to man, I think we both deserve to know what we were dealing with." I didn't know what to say. I hated him, but not in the way I expected. I hated that he'd believed her lies so easily. I hated that he got the version of her that laughed and whispered promises, while I was stuck with the one who rolled her eyes every time I said, "I love you." But most of all, I hated that I kind of wanted to say yes. Not because I needed closure, but because I had a plan forming. One she'd never see coming. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to sit across from his wife's affair partner and sip coffee like we were catching up after a ballgame. But there I was, 2 days later, in a booth at a roadside diner that smelled like burnt toast and broken dreams, listening to Grayson talk about the version of Kim he thought he knew. He wore guilt like a second skin. Nervous fingers tapping his mug, eyes darting to the door every few minutes like he expected her to burst in screaming. I didn't interrupt. I let him ramble, trying to stitch together the timeline of their relationship, every detail feeling like a paper cut, small but stinging. He described the hotel she liked, the way she laughed at his dumb jokes, the name she called me when he asked why she still wore her wedding ring. She said you were passive, that you never stood up for yourself. That one hit harder than I expected, because it was true. I hadn't stood up for myself. Not when she stopped touching me. Not when she started locking her phone. Not when she came home at 3 a.m. with glitter on her collarbone. I'd let it all slide, convincing myself that being patient was the same thing as being loyal. But loyalty to someone who's actively erasing you is just a slow form of self-destruction. And then Grayson leaned in. "There's one more thing." She mentioned a document. Something legal. I think it was a will or maybe a trust. She said your name was on it, but it wouldn't be for long. My blood ran cold. I knew exactly what he was talking about. The life insurance policy we updated last year after my surgery. $500,000 in coverage. My name on the paperwork. Her promise that if anything ever happened, she'd take care of things. Now I was wondering what her idea of taking care looked like. I didn't tell Grayson that part. I just nodded and said, "Thanks for meeting me." As I walked back to my car, my stomach twisted into knots. She hadn't just betrayed me emotionally or financially. If she really was planning something with that policy, this wasn't just infidelity. It was something darker, something dangerous. And I realized I couldn't just vanish anymore. I had to fight back carefully. I parked 3 houses down from my old driveway, engine off, lights off, heart pounding like it was trying to warn me. The neighborhood looked the same, too normal. Kids' bikes leaned against fences. Porch lights glowed like nothing evil had ever happened behind them. But my house looked unfamiliar. The curtains were drawn, but I could see a flicker of blue light from the upstairs window. Either the TV was on or someone forgot to close the laptop. I waited. 32 minutes passed before the porch light blinked off. Then I moved. Quiet, focused. Every step toward the back gate felt heavier than the last. I still had a key to the garden door. She never changed the locks, not yet. Inside, it smelled like lavender and betrayal. I could tell she'd cleaned, probably trying to erase the absence I left behind. But there were new shoes at the door. A coat that wasn't mine hanging by the wall. Someone else had been here since I left. I didn't stop to feel anything. I went straight for the office. That's where the safe was, the one she swore she never used. But I knew better. I opened the drawer where she kept the documents. There it was, the life insurance file. I flipped through it and found a new form, one I hadn't signed. A beneficiary change, dated 2 days after I left. My name was scratched off. Grayson's wasn't there either. Just the word private firm listed under recipient. That made no sense. Unless she planned to cash out without any next of kin involved. Which meant she had already assumed I wouldn't be around to fight it. I felt my knees go weak. I sat on the edge of the desk and tried to breathe, but the air in that room tasted like poison. I pulled out my phone and began recording, slowly panning across the documents. Then I searched through her computer. Nothing shocking at first: emails, old spreadsheets, folders labeled innocuously. Until I found a series of audio files buried in a hidden folder called voice notes. The most recent one was labeled, just in case. I pressed play, and her voice, casual and cold, filled the room. If anything happens, this is my proof. He was unstable. He made threats. I was scared. I froze. She was building a story. A cover. One she could activate the second I became inconvenient. And I realized she never thought I'd leave. She thought I'd snap. So now I had to make a choice. Disappear again, or make her afraid of what I'd do next. I didn't call her. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted to, believe me. My fingers hovered over the dial more than once. But rage only works when you don't show your hand. I needed information. Real information. So I called someone who knew her before I ever did, her old college roommate, Mallory. We hadn't spoken in years, but I remembered her being the only person Kim ever spoke about with genuine affection. And someone Kim had stopped talking to suddenly about 3 years ago. I dialed Mallory with zero expectations. But to my surprise, she picked up immediately. Her voice sounded cautious, but not cold. When I told her who it was, she went quiet for a second, and then said, "I've been waiting for this call." What she told me blew the hinges off everything I thought I knew. Turns out Kim had a pattern, and I wasn't the first. She had dated a guy named Russell right before me. Mallory said she watched Kim isolate him, emotionally wear him down, plant little stories in her friends' ears so that by the time she left him, everyone thought it was his fault. "She's like a gardener," Mallory said. "She plants chaos and then blames the weather." I asked why they stopped talking. Her voice dipped. "She forged my name on a lease and stuck me with 2 months of rent. Then told people I was unstable when I confronted her. I told her to lose my number. She did." I sat there in stunned silence as Mallory added, "I always wondered how long it would take for you to find out who she really is. Now I wasn't just betrayed. I felt stupid. Stupid for defending her when my friends raised concerns. Stupid for second-guessing my instincts. Stupid for loving someone who could weaponize words with such precision." Then Mallory said something that made my skin crawl. "Ellis, has she started telling people you've been acting erratic? Or that you've threatened her? That's usually what she does right before she goes nuclear." I felt the blood drain from my face. She had. Grayson mentioned it. That audio file in her laptop confirmed it. She was creating a story, a dangerous one, and I was the villain. I wasn't just running from heartbreak anymore. I was trying to stay ahead of a setup. I used to believe truth was enough, that if you simply exposed the facts, people would see through the lies. But when someone's been rehearsing their version long enough, the truth just sounds like noise. That's the game Kim was playing, quietly, thoroughly, turning me into a story of her own making. And no one was more eager to believe it than the people who already doubted me. I'd started hearing from mutual acquaintances, vague texts from coworkers, weird comments on social media, things like, "Hope you're taking care of yourself," or Just so you know, we're here if you need to talk. Code for we've heard things. She was laying the groundwork, carefully painting me as the emotionally unstable husband she tried to help. But she made one mistake. She underestimated how far I'd go to protect myself once I finally stopped defending her. I didn't want revenge. I wanted insurance. So I met with an attorney. Not for divorce, not yet. For protection. I laid everything out. The audio recording, the forged beneficiary form, the timeline of her affair, and the fact that she was attempting to rewrite history in real time. He didn't even flinch. He'd seen worse. But what he said next opened my eyes to a darker side of this I hadn't considered. If she's creating a record of threats, even fake ones, and she holds a life insurance policy in your name, you need to prepare for the possibility she's planning more than just a reputation hit. He leaned back and added, "You'd be surprised how many cases look like yours just before they go criminal." That night I didn't sleep. I didn't even lie down. I sat upright in a cheap motel room, staring at the glow of the TV without hearing a word of it. My heart beat too loud in my ears. Was I really in danger? Would she go that far? I thought back to the time I found her crying in the kitchen years ago after a fight with her boss. She told me she felt invisible, like no one respected her. I'd held her that night and promised she'd never have to feel small again. And now, she was shrinking me in every room, even when I wasn't in it. The next morning I sent an email to Kim. I didn't threaten. I didn't accuse. I just wrote, "The story you're building, I have a copy, and so does someone else. That's all." Then I turned off the email account and walked into the courthouse. It was time to file the papers, not because I thought it would end things, but because I needed the official trail to start with me. Not with a headline. When I walked out of the courthouse with the stamped petition in my hands, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow, like I just buried something I never got to grieve properly. But there was relief in it, too. A strange, quiet peace that came from finally reclaiming control. No more guessing what mood she'd be in. No more questioning if the phone faced down because of me or because of him. The lies had ended, at least on my side. Now it was just cleanup. I sent a copy of the recording to my lawyer, gave another to a friend in case anything ever happened to me, and then did the hardest thing I've ever done. I deleted every photo I had of us. A week passed before I heard from her again. Not a call. Not a voicemail. An envelope. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a letter. A real one, not a typed, lawyer-approved draft. Handwritten, in that looping script I once thought was charming. It wasn't an apology. Not really. More like a narrative. She told me how lonely she'd been. How she felt like she lost herself in our marriage. She said I was too soft, too patient, too small for the version of herself she was trying to become. But at the end, one line stood out. "I thought you'd never actually leave." That's what made me smile. Because she was right. I wasn't the guy who left. I was the guy who forgave too easily, who tried to fix things, who begged quietly instead of speaking up. But not this time. I'd walked away, and I hadn't looked back. Not once. And that was the version of me I was starting to like. Someone who finally stopped asking to be chosen and chose himself instead. A month later, I moved into a small apartment by the coast. Nothing fancy, but it has light. It has silence. It has peace. And for the first time in years, I sleep without clenching my jaw. I don't know if I'll love again, but I know one thing. I'll never settle for being someone's backup plan. Not ever again. What about you? Have you ever seen someone twist the truth so well, even you started to doubt yourself? Share your story or a real-life event like that in the comments. We love hearing your experiences. And don't forget, you're watching Reddit Confessions. Subscribe for more true, raw, and unforgettable stories like this.